What's up, guys?
Welcome back to another episode of Whiskey
Of
and
whiskey and
Water.
water. Back at it again.
Back and we're better. What is this?
Back and better
Episode number 3 or 4?
3 or 4? I don't know, guys. My mornings are turning into days, turning into nights, and yeah, I've hit that point where it starts to feel like a loop.
Yep,
That's where I'm at right now.
the simulation is glitching.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. But how are you, brother? What's going on? You got some pink hair.
Yeah,
Oh my
so if you're
god.
watching this, I look like a little strawberry shortcake motherfucking head
Yeah.
ass.
Little
Um,
pixie fairy vibes. I'm feeling
honestly,
it.
honestly, when I shaved my head, I felt like I looked like a video game character. You know how like the video game characters are always like
Yes.
buzzed and like you know,
Yes.
the perky pretties
Busty.
and shit. That's what I felt like, and now I feel like that more than ever because my hair is, like, bright pink.
Wait, can you change your Instagram, bio thing to video game character,
I should,
please?
honestly.
I think
Yeah,
that's an
so
option.
I, like, went, and bought some dye and, I figured, like, while my hair is short, like, fuck it, like, why wouldn't I
Fuck
try
it.
all these hair colors? So yeah, I thought it was gonna be way
Yeah.
more pastel, it's definitely, like, a hot pink, but
You know
I'm here
what?
for
But
it.
I was just gonna say I really like the shade of pink. I'm down for that hot pink vibe, just edgy.
Yeah, it's dope, I like it, and I ordered, like, a bunch of fucking colors on Amazon from, like, Manic Panic, um,
Oh my
like
god, do green.
I ordered, like, a seafoam green, I ordered, like a
Blue.
like a pastel purple.
You should do cheetah.
I would love to do cheetah, but, like, that requires, like, someone doing it, and I can't do that.
Yeah, true. Okay, well, what's new? We have an amazing episode for you guys today with none other Roseanne Pascal. You heard right. It is the person who birthed me. I came out of her vagina. We have a great conversation.
Honestly, though, yeah. So, we've been wanting to have her mom on for a while, and we're kinda just looking for the correct opportunity. Her mom is a mental health professional, she is a therapist, so it's all gonna make sense now. It's all just gonna
Yeah,
make
you
sense.
guys, I feel like I do mention her often because she listens to every episode and I always make sure to give her credit. But
Mhm.
all the books that I've read, she's given me a lot of my mindset. I mean, she pretty much raised me as a single mom. She definitely kind of played both roles in a way as far as being, a strict person in my household, but also being a mom.
And providing that
Not
feminine energy.
Yeah, so she definitely has had a lot of influence on the person who I am today. So I'm excited to have her on.
Yeah, it was really good. Of course, we film our intros, like our catch ups, like after the episode, so we have like a little bit of like, so we kind of know what went on in the episode, and it was really good. We felt like we provided a lot of insight, and yeah,
Yeah, we definitely go on some tangents here and there, but it's a great conversation. I think you guys will really enjoy it. I think it's something that I don't know. I know I've said this before, but I feel like every time we do an episode with a guest, I'm like, oh, it's such a good conversation. But it
mhm,
really is. So
mhm,
I know you guys are going to
yeah.
love this.
Take your word for
Also,
it.
yes, take our word for it. But anything else exciting for catch up time? Any other quarantine activities?
Um, I did mushrooms the other day.
Ooh, love that for you.
I'm getting to a point where I can kind of like self like dose, like just
Yeah,
literally do it by myself and kind of just
explore.
explore and get to like certain levels of myself that I wouldn't necessarily get to with either a group of people or one other person. So yeah, I had some cool revelations, and I felt like I truly had like an emotional like breakup with my hair because I felt like when I had
Ooh,
yeah, and I haven't told Liv really much about it at all. So yeah, I really felt like I like broke up with my hair, like and with that
interesting.
person. Like I felt like I really felt like I was like reborn, like rebirthed into like a new version of myself.
I
And
love that so much.
yeah, and I just got some really cool insight from like I've been speaking to my shamans and just people from my spiritual community, and a lot of them have said things like now you're going to be able to absorb information so much more, and because you released your hair, like, abundance is going to be coming to you because, you're gonna be rewarded for taking these leaps and, restarting
Yeah.
yourself. So just really cool things that I've been, just aware of, and yeah. I also have some just fun things that are cooking personally, but I wanna kind of keep under wraps until they happen. But yeah, it's kinda where I'm at. What about you, brother?
Feel that. I'm just over here learning stuff from TikTok.
TikTok
Guys, TikTok
University?
Academy. Yeah, TikTok University is real. I learned to bake bacon, which, like, I've always kinda knew, but, like, yo, bake your fucking bacon. It is so much easier to clean up. It comes out fucking great. Also, I learned that tip about the chicken tenderloin. Have you seen that shit?
Oh,
I
so
did it.
good.
I did it. It works, and wow, that's a fucking pro tip.
Dude, I stopped buying those because of that reason specifically. When I saw that, I freaked out. I was so excited.
Yeah, it's amazing. I made some chip dip yesterday. I did some tie-dye. Oh, I tie-dyed your sweatpants, by the way. I hope you don't mind. Um,
Um, what sweatpants?
your marine ones.
What marine
They're like
ones?
I've had them for, like, a hot minute. They're, like, black. They say, like, something marine on them. I don't know. Came out pretty cute. But I've been tie-dyeing.
Wait, I'm sorry.
I'll send you a pic.
You tie-dyed my sweatpants?
I've had them for, like, 3 years. You didn't even know they existed.
I do know those
Anyways,
exist. I'm wearing my bootleg version of them right now because I don't have those. You bitch. Hold
I'll
on.
send you a pic.
I'm actually that's
Um,
funny that you said that though because I'm tie-dyeing a bunch of shit this weekend just to do something
yeah.
fun.
It's fun and it's cute. Why not? I
Mhm.
also got a new book, Atomic Habits, which I'm really excited about. Yeah, I'm gonna start reading that soon and just, keeping myself busy. I'm in a good spirit right now. Every I take it day by day. I
Mhm.
have been experiencing some sort of anxiety, which is a perfect opportunity to tell you guys about Wellness Organics, which is a CBD company I just started working with. And took some CBD this morning. I feel good. Been taking it all week. It's really helped me just kind of like manage the anxious feelings that I am having, which I'm sure a lot of us are right now. But it's a family owned company. I love supporting small businesses. And especially with CBD, I don't know, brands can be kind of sketchy. So
Yeah,
the,
and because
yeah,
so many blew up in such a quick time frame, you really don't know the quality that you're getting.
Yeah, you don't know the quality. So like, I got on the phone with the owner and we talked and we built a relationship. So I feel good about promoting them. I use their product. I know it works. So yeah, Wellness Organics, check them out. We will link it in the description and you guys can use Olivia 10 for 10% off.
Hell
On
yeah,
top of the
brother.
40% off COVID-19 sale they're having. So you're getting 50% off CBD. Go do your thing, people.
Love that.
Um yeah,
Um,
so that's that. Do we wanna do a pro
Pro
tip?
tip? Yeah, I have 2 here, which I'm super down to just give you
Fuck it.
guys
Fuck
because
it. Spoil the brothers.
we need a little bit more pro tips, some pick me ups.
Yes.
So the first one was the one that we talked about last night, which was the Spotify wellness playlist. So if you want to go into a little bit about that,
Yes. Yeah, guys, so yesterday I found this thing on Spotify. It said, like, what'd I say it was?
like a
It
wellness
was like
playlist.
yeah, it was just like today's wellness playlist. That's what it said. I was like, "What's this?" And guys, they curate this entire playlist of podcast and music, and
And
it is literally
meditation.
and meditations, and it's made to be play throughout your entire day. So like from the morning into the afternoon into the evening, which I think is so cool of Spotify to do and like so just like thoughtful.
It's so
But yeah, so
fire.
it started with a little meditation and then it went to like five cute little acoustic songs and then it went into a podcast and then it went into more songs. So yeah, if you guys are just feeling like you need some help or guidance throughout the day, check out Spotify's wellness guide. And they make one for every day. So
Dude,
cute.
we gotta get we gotta get whiskey and water on one of those playlists, brother.
Facts. Who do we need to talk
If
to?
anyone here has a plug at
Guys,
Spotify.
help us out. Spotify employees. Okay, what
um,
was the other one?
Second pro tip. Okay.
Yes.
So I recently, and this is not an ad. I recently downloaded Skillshare because I think Masterclass was running like this really dope promotion, and I looked into it, but they didn't have enough classes on the things that I was like searching for, which was like
Mhm.
I want to like just tune up my skills, like my retouching skills, my Photoshop skills, etc. And so I was searching and I found Skillshare, which is a little bit more for creatives. They have SE. Wow, I'm like, this is a full blown fucking ad. Regardless, you guys get it. They provide motherfucking classes for people, huge like selection. But I'm going to tell you how to hack the fucking system. And me and my man figured this out the other day. So I'm gonna give credit to him because he listens and he's like, "Yeah, it just wasn't even you." So you know how like when you go on a site, it'll like promote like, oh, you get 1 week, 2 weeks free
Mhm.
before it starts charging you. So I was like, all right, yeah, I mean, I'm gonna sign up anyway. So I clicked through, and then I start filling it out, and then I was like, I wanted to double back and check something, so I just clicked the back button, and in front of my own eyes, it changed from I think 1 week 1 week of Skillshare free to 2 months of Skillshare for free.
Hell yeah, brother!
We were like, wait, and we were both on
Hell yeah!
our separate on our separate desktops, so we checked, and this is a thing. So yeah, if you and fuck it, you try and do this on other fucking sites. Also, another pro tip is
Oh,
that
give it to him.
we gotta give it to up. I've noticed, and I'm sure you. I mean, I don't know. You guys have to know this by now. Maybe I'm just like an online shopping aficionado. But if you go to a site and put something in your cart, and like you put your email in, and they capture your email, they'll like almost guaranteed within the next like 48 hours they'll send you another code saying, hey, you left this in your cart, here's 25% off to like incentivize you. And because I've worked just like in e-commerce marketing online, like this is a huge thing that like page like from small companies to like large companies will do. Secondly, if you're still trying to get that discount code, maybe they haven't sent it to you yet, always Google motherfucking Fashion Nova discount code because you will, I'd say, 9 times out of 10 find a solid discount code. I do this for literally everything.
Or,
Or
sorry, our pro tips are going on today, but we're just
you got to give it to
spoiling the
them.
brothers.
How to do it.
Or find the brand on Instagram, check their tagged photos, look for influencer photos, and look for the promo codes in the caption that those influencers are posting. Pamela 20 for 20% off. Bitch, there you go.
And not to mention, you're helping out that influencer. Just saying. Wow.
Facts. It's not hard work, but it's honest work.
It's so appropriate because
just doing God's work over here.
Doing God's work over here, guys. Don't mind us. Just sharing the tips of the trade.
Okay. Well, with that being said, we're going to get into our episode. This might be a lengthy one, but we know you guys will absolutely love it. If you are enjoying this so far, if you do enjoy this, please, please, please put it on your story. I say that every time, and I go, please, please, please. Anyways, put it on your story. Guys, we put a lot of, thought and love and effort into each and every episode that comes out.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Literally. So, you guys seeing it on your stories is so validating for us, and we just love to see the love. So please, we encourage everyone, share it with people you love.
And if you guys tag us personally as well, we always repost it on our stories. And truly, like, I don't think we can stress it enough, like how much it means to us. And I feel like you guys have been pretty great about that lately. So, we love the love. We see literally everything. We're constantly sending each other the messages that you guys send us, and like just crying. Just like, we're so grateful. We love you guys so much, and we're so appreciative. And yeah, I think you guys are going to love this episode. So enjoy, brothers.
All right, brothers. Enjoy. See you on the other side.
We are here with none other than the woman who birthed our very own water, Roseanne. How are you today, my love?
I'm very well. I'm so excited. I mean, whiskey water. I'm like there. I've arrived.
You made it.
I made it. If I'm here, I made it.
I wish you guys could have heard. I should have recorded asking her because it was so cute. She was like, "Ah, ah,
Let's
me?"
go.
Little old me.
No,
It was really
but then
cute.
what did I say? I was like, somebody canceled on you.
She was like, "So my last resort?" I'm like, "No,
Last
you."
resort, never.
The universe works in strange ways.
It's
No,
okay.
but really, we wanted to have you on for a very long time, and no better time than now. So we're
Absolutely.
really excited for this discussion.
Yeah, so am I.
Yeah.
So am I.
I think you guys are going to love this. So, I guess introduce yourself to our audience. Just let them know what you do.
So I'm Olivia's mom. And in addition to that, I'm also currently working as a therapist. Right now, I'm doing couples counseling. Prior to that, I had worked in the field of substance abuse and family therapy. So I'm licensed in 2 states.
Oh,
Yeah,
she got
hello.
credentials.
She fancy.
Yep. So yeah, and you guys know because of all the books that I've recommended that the other part of my journey is really self-development and spirituality and how those two kind of meld.
I think it's going to be so interesting for our listeners to learn more about you because it's going to just reveal so much about Olivia and everything is just going to make sense. And it's already just so it all just makes sense.
Now you'll see the hand gestures where they come from.
Oh god.
Olivia's like, wait, let me rethink this.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so what I've always loved about like the work you do and really respected is that you do bring in a lot of wellness and a lot of like I guess Buddhist practices and philosophies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not so like practical. You bring a lot of spirituality into the mix, and even when working with, for example, substance abuse patients or clients who are in low income situations, when you go into the projects and you're working with those type of clients, like you're always able to incorporate spirituality in a way that they can relate to, and I've always found that really interesting.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Well, I mean, it ultimately, spirituality can sound abstract, but for me, the reason it makes sense is because it's really the question of like the truth of who we are, and everybody can relate to that. I mean, most people in some way are asking that question. What's the meaning of my life? Why is this happening? Who am I really? Do you know who I really am? So it's not unrelated in any way to me, to mental health or to life suffering. So if you see it in the context of Buddhism particularly, then it makes sense. You can make sense of the suffering. And it's not just suffering. It's obviously a deep tradition and conversation. So
we wanted to have you on not only because you're Olivia's mom, but we felt that you could have a really good conversation and speak to those people who might be having a difficult time or struggling with mental health during quarantine. And so we really wanted to have a deeper, more meaningful conversation and kind of speak to those people. And we felt like you'd be the perfect fit.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sorry. Did you want to say something, Olivia?
Well, no, just that, we had our COVID cocoon episode, and that was kind of about, us encouraging our audience to use this time to be intentional and to work on personal development. But I think, especially in the last few weeks, it's really come to the surface that a lot of people are dealing with their mental health issues right now. People who haven't suffered before in the past are suffering now. People who have had pre-existing anxiety or depression, it's maybe worse now for obvious reasons like isolation and
not
just
seeing an end in sight.
Obvious reasons. Yeah. So I think a lot of people might be suffering in silence right now. And I know I have dealt with my own anxiety over the past few weeks. I shared in the COVID cocoon that I was like making myself sick. And then more recently, I was having more of a broad general anxiety of like feeling just the anxiety of the world, like less
Collective consciousness.
like less of mine and more of like the feeling for people suffering and what's happening to the economy and just like a
Mhm.
very general anxiety. So, I just think I would really love to speak to those who are struggling right now
Mhm.
and kind of offer just your insight from a mental health professional and wellness professional and see like what we can offer them as, practical
Yeah.
takeaways.
Yeah. So there are kind of different levels of this experience, right? So on a really practical level, of course, people are suffering. Their sense of stability is challenged. In some cases, we can't minimize the reality that people have lost their incomes. They're in survival mode. Survival mode is, our fight flight. It's when we're like, is the tiger going to eat me? At this point, is coronavirus going to demolish my life? So these are very, very real, deeply felt existential challenges. So on a practical level, what can you do? First, I guess I need to say though, if people are really having severe anxiety and severe depression, they should seek mental health counseling. Most therapists now are going online. As you know, I have an online practice now. So we shouldn't, take this conversation to be in any way, a mental health conversation in terms of treatment. If you're seeking, if you're suffering severe anxiety and depression, seek counseling and call 911 if it gets, that bad. However, generally, how do most of us,
Disclaimer.
yeah, that's my disclaimer because it's important, like
Yeah.
there is a stigma. I think it's less than it's ever been, but there is still a stigma about is something like wrong with me? And the fact of the
Right.
matter is, human beings have like 6 core emotions and we all share them. Whether we talk about it or not to each other is another question, but happy, sad, anxious, stressed, surprised. There's basically, we're all human, and that's our commonality. So in terms of really practical, one of the things that is really important, definitely talking to other people and normalizing what's happening. You know,
Right.
obviously, we're all going through this. Move your body. Energy gets trapped in us, anxiety, stress gets trapped in us. Taking a walk, doing yoga, dancing, being silly, getting that energy to dissipate is real. Grounding yourself. These are, again, very practical wellness tips, to center your body, focus, meditate, you could say, on what you hear, what you see, any smells, any
Your
taste,
senses.
your senses. That's grounding. Put both feet on the floor. Be here now. Ground yourself because you are. And that's where, for me, it goes into the more of the spiritual piece,
Bless
which
you.
is, bless you, in all ways, bless you. Um, it goes into that piece of what is stable. And that's the bigger picture of this pandemic for me is that, this is a time in many ways that can be seen as rebirth. I mean, human beings have been through adversity before, great adversity. We're not as fragile as we may think we are. And part of this is the challenge to find that which is really stable in us, as the world around us falls apart, as maybe our habits have to change, as our relationships change, how we identify with who we are in our work, our relationships, all that's kind of falling away. So now the terror is an existential terror, like what's left? But in that terror of what's left is where we ultimately really find what's always there, which
I
is
love what you said
self.
about change because that's actually something I haven't thought of yet. And, just thinking about us as humans, like a lot of people are really scared of change, and that's in everyday life,
Mm-hmm.
like breakups and losing someone in your life or changing your job or, even small things as far as changing maybe your diet or changing
Mm-hmm.
certain things you eat.
or
I
or
think
having to
we're
change
naturally.
or having to change your lifestyle, because I feel like a lot of people too, given that they're out of work, may have to downgrade in materialistic things, and I feel like that can really challenge their sense of self as well. So I just wanted to throw that in there
Exactly.
if someone's
No,
feeling that.
exactly. It's a sense of identity is wrapped up in the external pieces, which is not bad. You know, it serves a purpose. It's not to demonize that effort on our part to kind of feel like we have some permanency. Like that goes back to the Buddhist thing. You know, we cling to permanency. Impermanency is terrifying. So we're looking for stability when in fact the realization is things are always changing. And if we can become more comfortable with the changeable, we'll suffer less. But it's our grasping at permanency and usually pleasure that causes suffering. So these are some just Buddhist principles. But to go to your point, Olivia, yeah, change. I mean, who am I now? You know, if I identified in my job, besides again the real threat of like I don't have money for food. I mean, that's basic survival,
Survival.
literal threat. So, you know, not to minimize that or glorify that, or, you know, we are very privileged. Everyone, you know, the three of us here are privileged, and that's not a concern. People that are literally wondering how they're going to feed their families, this is kind of, you know, a little bit of a conversation that's a little bourgeois in some ways. However, that still said, we do know people have gone through great adversity. You know, the Holocaust, how did people get through that? That did get through it. They did. And it wasn't by looking outside of themselves. It was finding what was stable inside of themselves and holding on to that.
What is
Yeah.
always unchanging, because when everything else externally, I mean, is going to adapt whether we like it or not,
Mhm.
whether it's quarantine or not. I mean, we're going to face adversity in our lives, and if we have that stability, if we find that stability within ourselves, that's unchanging, and
Mhm.
it's energy and it's power that we can always draw upon.
I was also reading a few blogs online and I saw that people were talking about this feeling of grief. Not like necessarily, I mean, for a lot of people, yes, losing a loved one or friend,
Mhm.
but feeling of grief like losing normal day to day interactions, like your ability to physically connect with people, grief of like the sense of certainty and maybe even self power and control. So, you know, on the topic of change and how just as humans, it's something we're scared of, I think it's natural for considering how much change is happening right now, like everything is changing.
Mhm.
I think it's, you know, something that people might be causing people that feeling of anxiety.
Yeah. So again, to keep it, you know, I'm sometimes hesitant to speak in ways that are about transformation because I never want people to think there's a minimizing of the hard realities of this, right? So we know that it's difficult. We know that it's challenging. And how we're going to interpret and use that is what the only control we have. In fact, the only control we have is what we're going to do with what's happening to us.
Right.
So, of course, it's terrifying and scary, and there's real suffering. There are real practical concerns. And how are we going to face them? Our resistance to the truth and the severity and the, you know, the somberness of what's happening isn't going to make us find solutions.
Right.
So what are the solutions? The solutions ultimately have to be found with our response. The truth is that in nature, there's always destruction and rebirth. So if we look at something like, you know, not to again be, you know, trite, but, you know, a butterfly, right? Transforms from what it was and comes out this completely different creature. A seed planted has to completely destruct, completely fall apart,
Right.
unrecognizable to what it once was. This painful circumstance of COVID is an immense opportunity, which we will either take or we won't. We will either be in resistance to it or we will say, well, there's the cliff. I'm either going to try to fly or I'm just going to, you know, fall to the ground. So,
Yeah.
so we're there. So, is it easy? No. And how do you do it? There are practical ways to do it, and they have to do with mindfulness. Um, Mindfulness is not about stilling the mind. Mindfulness is about putting a little space between what we're experiencing and ourself. And that little bit of space is where there's possibilities to choose differently. So
Mhm.
it's not trying to judge what we see or suppress anything. It's simply having a different relationship to the content of our mind and our emotions. How does that help? Depression, anxiety. These can be overwhelming. If you can take a little bit of space and recognize, whew, my heart rate is beating. I'm feeling my hands are getting clammy. I'm, these thoughts of impending doom. I'm going to lose my daughter. I'm going to lose my husband. That little bit of breath is where we can start to feel some sense of control, is where we can start to feel some sense of I'm still here. Here's this anxiety, here's this sadness, and here I am. And in between that is where transformation happens.
Yeah. And something that Jess and I talk about often is like being an observer of your thoughts
Mhm,
and, creating that space, like you said, like, oh, this like you're and we talked about the power of visualization too in the COVID cocoon episode. If you
mhm.
guys haven't listened to that, definitely go listen. But we talked about using it as a tool and I literally have to imagine myself like watching myself like from 2 feet above, watching myself and observing my thoughts. I have to visualize it in that way, and that helps me.
Beautiful.
But but yeah, I think creating that space people have a hard time doing.
Not, I think it's about not identifying with those thoughts,
Mhm,
validating them and respecting the body for giving you those thoughts, because the body's just trying to protect you, the mind is just trying to protect you.
mhm.
But thanking it and wishing it the best, but understanding that right now you have control, you have power, and that you are all right.
Yeah, that's entirely what the work of transformation is about, not identifying with our person, not
Mhm.
identifying with the circumstances. I mean, that can get really deep, and I don't know that that's, the nature of this discussion, but that's where freedom ultimately lies.
Yeah.
True freedom.
And I think even being able to talk about it and kind of transform your feelings into words or into sentences, it
Mhm,
kind of like makes them and making them tangible. So I think talking to friends is really important. Just thinking of practical things that people can take away from
mhm,
this,
mhm.
talking about it, experiencing it, and trying not to run away from it. And I think what you mentioned previously is kind of just like surrendering almost to
Entirely,
the
entirely.
feelings and not running away from it, just taking it, which isn't
Yeah,
easy.
yeah,
It's hard, it's heavy, it might not be a
yeah.
pretty thing, but I feel like getting through it is really so different than just trying to get over it or go around it.
Or
Yeah.
resisting it. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I would say the caveat again is um, it's such a fine line, right? Because you want to lean into it, you want to surrender to it, and you have to develop and cultivate the ability to not let it take you
Consume you.
someplace or take you someplace dangerous. Like
Right.
you have to be careful telling someone who's really depressed,
Right.
lean into it because
Right.
what does that really look like?
I'm
So
glad you
really,
said that.
yeah, the first part is to develop and cultivate this ability to have some separation and to see, and this is happening and here I am. And this is happening and here I am. And to not identify, as Jess said, with the thoughts and the emotions. This is sadness. This is rage. This is grief. And here I am. It's incredibly hard. The work of transformation is completely changing our orientation to who we think we are. So when we say it's hard, it's challenging everything we've come to know about who we think we are, all of our conditioning. So
Hmm.
Right.
it's hard to do, and yet what else do we have? What else do we have? Sure, absolutely, Olivia, really practical, talking to people. And in terms of talking to people, again, sharing like the fact that I'm experiencing this and I don't necessarily have control over changing it. And like being really humble with that. Like, this is beyond me. And that comes in a lot with couples too. Believe it or not, at this time, a lot of my work is about acknowledging your humanity with each other.
Right.
Instead of attacking each other for your bitterness or your frustration, recognizing, yeah, I'm completely, you guys have talked about this too on the episode in terms of your own relationship, owning up, but not taking ownership of your bad behaviors. You're human. You're going to get
Human, yeah.
frustrated, So if you can come to your partner and say, I am so like frustrated right now, and I'm sorry if I'm being a bitch or whatever. And yeah, and you can get forgiveness for that. Yeah, I understand. Thanks for saying so. I know I was short with you or whatever. You're putting that space. You're not taking it so personally. You're not saying this is who I am. That's who you are. You're saying we are under an enormous amount of pressure, and things may come out because we're human and we're not used to this. And this is pushing us on every level. And that alone can create some peace.
And I think it's important to not judge your partner for being human either. And,
Mm-hmm.
giving them the space to feel, because if they can't feel and, make mistakes without, feeling super guilty, like you're beating them up for having those feelings, they feel like they can't express. And I think it's so important that you even brought that up, because even earlier, me and Olivia were struggling to kind of like write this episode, and and we were definitely getting a little bit short with each other, and she said, I think I'm having anxiety. I'm sorry. I'm going to go meditate and stretch, and we'll regroup in literally like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And just that, like, I came and meditated as well, because I realized that like I was feeding her anxiety as well. And it was,
Mm-hmm.
impacting me. And I sat here and I meditated before this, and even just giving myself that space, one, I was able to just like completely like, detach from my ego. And I realized, like, is this impersonal? We're on the same team, we're on the same page
Mm-hmm.
here. And yeah, we are under a lot of pressure, whether or not we realize, like, we're under a collective consciousness, and whether we like it or not, we are feeling what everyone else in this world is feeling, which is pressure, which is stress, which is a little bit of anxiety. So I think definitely just giving yourself that space and forgiving yourself, and validating those feelings is important.
You see, and that's the freedom we just spoke of, what you did. You recognized, okay, I'm having anxiety. You forgave each other for that. You were able to pivot instead of continuing the cycle, which many people that don't know that there's this other possibility will just get into that cycle. It could go days. It could go,
Right. It
we
becomes
don't.
personal.
And that's where the freedom is. See, and that's where the out is, when you realize, like, whoa, sorry, this is just, we're all
Yeah.
under this collective
You know
stress.
what? It gives you something to point the finger out that's not you or I.
The
It's like,
problem is the
this
problem, not
isn't
the person.
me or you. This is my anxiety.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know?
So this,
It gives you something else to blame, which is nice, because it doesn't, I think a lot of times in arguments, and I know, me and Tyler have been going through our own stuff mostly because of me, but it's my own anxieties, and it becomes this blame game. Like, well, you did this, but you said that. Well, I did that because you said that, and then by being able to put the blame on something, like, sorry, that was just my anxious feelings and that's why I'm reacting like this, you're able to not take it personally anymore, because it's
mhm.
not someone else's fault. It's just like, we're human, and this is just something that we're trying to navigate together.
Mhm.
Yeah. So there's a phrase in narrative therapy. It's the problem is the problem, not the person. The person isn't the problem.
True.
The problem is the problem.
Love
So,
that.
and the other thing that you're talking about, Olivia, is in that moment, you're not identifying with your ego, right? You're saying, oh, this is not really how I want to be. I'm not going to attack and judge. I'm not going to take this to be who I am. I'm not going to identify with this. I'm going to recognize it, have a little space from it, and be able to come. And again, that's where the freedom of how we respond can create less suffering, right? Can free us from suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So
Something you mentioned earlier reminded me of this this quote that we've mentioned before on one of our episodes is you're allowed to be a work in progress and a masterpiece at the same time.
I love that, both end. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that because it's true. It's like even while I meditated, Jess and I were definitely like kind of getting frustrated with each other, but as I was meditating, I was like, and also I want this to be a reminder for our listeners that like we're like talking the talk and we're walking the walk. Like, everything we preach, we're really trying to live by ourselves. And I sat there and as I was anxious, I just started journaling. Why do I
Good for
feel
you.
anxious? Why am I feeling these feelings? It's the pressure to deliver, it's the pressure to perform. It's, feel like we've set the bar so high and I don't want to disappoint people with our conversations. So even just putting it onto paper and getting it out of my head made me feel so much better. And also seeing it on paper made me realize that like we're human. Like why are we I don't know. It was
So
just
hard on ourselves.
yeah, it was just really humbling because I'm like sitting here and I'm like trying to make myself better, but also like cutting myself some
Mhm.
slack, of like, dude, you're okay. So that kind of really was like the epitome of like you're allowed to be a work in progress and a masterpiece at the same damn time. Like just meet
Yeah,
yourself where you're at,
entirely.
and not
Also,
judging yourself.
that's so cultural too. This is this idea we have of what makes
Perfection.
what success is, and that we have to be productive. And I mean, that's a whole other conversation about, humanity's like collective ego of how important we all think we are. And it's great. It's great to have goals and to try to reach them, but from a place of playfulness and
Creativity and
creativity, not
fun.
from demand. But
Right.
And from where we root our self-worth, because we set these goals
mhm.
and we think if I don't reach this goal, then I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy of love. I'm not
Right.
worthy of success. I'm not worthy of abundance.
Yeah, and what is worthy? Like I look to nature honestly for truth, because I feel like whatever it is that we're a part of is way beyond mankind. Like most of what life is has nothing to do with mankind. So I look at the earth and we're a part of that. Where
Yeah.
our beinghood doesn't require um, earning it. We weren't born to earn our place. We have our place. Now, again, of course, we all have to, the nature of humanity is we have to work, we have to make money. That's how this system has been set up. We don't get to just, lie on the beach like a seal. We're not just out there trying to
Damn
find our
it.
food, and put a shelter. But when we get down to the core, those are really our core needs, is for connection. We're heard, animals, connection, know that we're cared for. Food and shelter are really all that we actually need. So that's why, again, in this pandemic, people losing their income, it's real, it's the basic, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like real practical needs. But
Mhm.
beyond that, so much of this other stuff we do about goal attainment, when that turns, as you recognize it did, into like a stressor, that's an opportunity to say, hey, wait a minute, I have this whip at my own back right now.
Right, right.
Like what am I doing? But that's also a story. And, probably in our case, Olivia, I contributed to you buying that story because I'm a part of that narrative. I know you guys have read the Four Agreements. There's that whole opening about the collective dream, and we all think that we have to somehow be more than simply we are. And
Human.
but that too, the good news is that too comes around. That's the point of waking up. That's the point of, without the pain, there we wouldn't know pleasure. That whole duality of where we are in this plane of existence is, the both and the yin yang. So in that case,
Mhm.
if we hadn't come to that, and that's what the opportunity is now. So I'm getting really excited. The
It's like
opportunity now collectively is to realize that all of what we might have put ourselves into as valuable and essential is crumbling, and it's
crumbling.
painful. Again, never minimizing that. It's devastating. And yet isn't that exactly what it needs to be? I mean,
Right.
to bring it back around to transformation, one of the great images, and actually Eckhart Tolle spoke of this, and I always kept it in my mind, is this image of Christ. Regardless of whether you're a Christian or not, there's this image of Christ, the man, and Christ, the man, has to carry his cross, and eventually he dies on that cross in order to be reborn. The suffering and the circumstances of suffering are often the catalyst for great change and for us to really reevaluate what is important to me? What do I want? How can I incorporate love, truth, whatever it is for you, the virtues of that into my daily life? So it's a mixed blessing. And again, I'm
Yeah.
cautious to say that because I don't want it to ever seem like, oh, great, where's the pandemic and people are dying and we get to grow.
Right, right.
Um, but there's
And
both.
yeah, there's a lot to unpack in what you just said.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I think to touch on what you last said, that is a good piggyback or, roundabout way to bring me to the feeling of guilt right now.
Mm,
I know we talked about the feeling of, I think there's this feeling of guilt for maybe being able to feel happy right now. And I did speak about this in the COVID episode, which is the conversation that we had because I talked to you about it. Like, you are able to hold space for both, to hold space for those suffering and to pray for them and to really be in solidarity with them, but also to hold space for yourself and know that what you have to do for yourself is stay positive. And if you're having joyful moments, let yourself. And I listened to another podcast and they were just saying how there's this overwhelming feeling of people who are enjoying this time where they're like,
mm,
why should I feel happy when people are dying, when people are losing their jobs, when people don't know how they're putting food on the table? Like, why am I worthy of feeling joy right now? And they kind of have that guilt. And I know I've kind of felt that too of like, I'm not
Definitely.
allowed to feel happy right now. I'm not allowed to because there's too much suffering happening. Can you
Mhm.
speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing, this goes back to the yin yang, it's both ends. It's just as true that we have joy. It's just as true that some of us are experiencing pleasure. It doesn't negate the pain, and being conscious of it and being able to say, hold other people's pain. We're diverse. We're diverse, complicated people. We can handle the diversity of experiences. And Muji has a quote. He says, "Don't remind the world that it's horrible. Remind the world that it's beautiful." So those of us who can, I almost feel like we have a duty to hold the light, to hold the beauty, to remember our resilience, to remind people we are resilient, that we are humanity, and we've been through things before that have been horrible. And actually, there have been horrors that have been happening concurrently to what's now happening by what we would call the West. Suffering is not new with COVID. You look at, again, our political situation. People are suffering and have been walking around with masks on because bombs are dropping or they're afraid of a
Yeah.
chemical attack. Again, a whole other conversation, but it's just that many of us in our cushy lives are suddenly also experiencing this. But
Yeah.
for all of us to deny the truth, which is there is love, there is joy, there is contentment, some of us are well, and to have deep gratitude for that, to really be like, thank you, not thank you, me, thank you that it didn't happen to me, but just like gratitude and thank you for all of it, and to the ability to see and learn. And if no one was doing well, how would there be first responders? Think of the people, they're kind of like bodhisattvas, the healthcare workers are going in consciously and helping others who are suffering. If they didn't have a place in themselves that was sane and was stable and knew that there was value, there would be no one helping anybody else.
Right.
So
So
keeping
there's power in the joy and there's power in staying positive and like
absolutely,
understanding that plays just as an important role as everything else.
Mhm.
think about, again, this images tend to like inform me, like there's this image of darkness. If a little bit of light comes into a dark room, right? Versus light is not the absence of darkness. Darkness is the absence of light. So if you crack open just the blind a little bit and you start to fill that darkness with light, I mean, that's those of us who can, that's, I feel like, our job. That's why I do what I do. If I were to get, of course, I have my own anxieties, as you know. If I were to just get in a ball like the world is falling apart and terrible. Sorry if that, you know, then I wouldn't be able to be of any service to anybody.
Right.
So it's almost my duty. It's almost would be blasphemy to me for me not to kind of rise up and remind people that it's beautiful. The earth is fine. The earth is still there. We do have people helping. We have people shopping for us. I mean, it's a lot to be grateful for, and there's a lot of human spirit to also see.
Yeah.
And it's true. It's not like you're making it up. So who are you
Yeah.
to decide I should feel guilty for what's true? It's truly here. Count the
Yeah.
blessings.
And I think that there's definitely like there's a distinct difference between, being ignorant about it and like dancing on people's graves, between being sensitive and considerate and, like you said, like returning back to gratitude. I feel like, the gratitude is the biggest difference because, I mean, if you are just because there are people who are like, even today I saw Lifestyle Miami, was one of those big Miami accounts. He posted a bunch of people on a boat yesterday. Of course we were still supposed to be social distancing. And people are like, oh, let them live their lives, let them be happy. And it's like, oh, this is not, let these two things not be confused,
Very good, Jess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, entirely. That's actually harming other people. By your need to be, when we talk about joy and happiness and light, it's about recognizing that there's still love in your life, that your needs are being met, and you're doing what you need to do to show that gratitude by not putting other people at risk.
A lot of people were saying, like I said, let them live their lives. They're not hurting anyone. But it's like, they absolutely are hurting everyone. One, by posting it and sharing it and kind of spreading the idea that this is okay. And two, these people are still going to go out and grocery shop and go to the pharmacies and touch doorknobs, which other people are going to be touching. And, it's like, it's not about, just because, like, maybe they all live together. It's not about that. It's about what each of these individual people are still capable of, and that's, putting others at risk and putting others at harm. So
Yeah.
definitely return to gratitude and be happy, but do it responsibly and do it in the safety and comfort of your own home.
Yeah, and that's about being responsible to other
And
people's
that's
suffering.
on being a responsible adult. Period. Nothing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's being responsible to other people's experience, right? That's like if someone has no food, and you're like, oh, I'm loving this steak right now, it's like, share.
Yeah.
But that's not even a great example. I think just more to the point, like on social media, you're giving people the idea it's okay to go out there. That literally puts people at risk.
Yeah, and
Period.
not to mention, the people that really, really are suffering and struggling, and it's more difficult for them to stay inside and to not go to work. Yet you're out here, partying on a boat and sharing that. I mean, I just feel like it's kicking dirt in the face of the people who are being responsible and continue to, like, you're prolonging the amount of time that we have to remain in
Yeah.
quarantine, which is indirectly or directly, affecting these people who are struggling every day and being responsible.
A really crazy, and it might go on a tangent, but you guys will reel me in. I just had a thought because, I always try to look at it from another perspective, because I caught myself being like, yeah, I wonder if that could also be said for us in some ways in the West. So this idea that, and again, this is kind of a tangent, but I'll do it anyway. To go back to the political, like Syria, right? bombs are dropping, people are refugees. They're, people from South America are trying to get into this country. People are suffering every day, right? So can we also say that for us to be blind to that and to be like, yeah, I'm out here skiing in Denver. I mean, but then what can you do, right? We can't all just stop our activity, but it's a wake up to do both, to be
Yeah.
attentive, to pay attention to what's happening in the world, to vote people that are compassionate, and to, maybe give some of your funds to help support organizations that are serving those communities, so that you're not just completely turning a blind eye to other people's suffering, but you're also not, refusing
Yeah.
your own, life because, well, other people are suffering. But it's
Yeah.
just in
Absolutely.
my mind.
And
Something
doing
that I
You can go ahead.
Something that I recently thought of was just, I think the whole subject of toilet paper being a shortage has been like whatever on the news and, something funny, but it actually made me think about, this is the first time that as a first world country and as a very privileged, a lot of us, of course there are people who are not in such
Mm-hmm.
circumstances, but, the people that I know, the people in my life mostly, probably I would say majority of our listeners, have a roof over their head, right? And food on the table. So like having to think about not having toilet paper or not having our preferred, not having ketchup with our eggs, things like that I've like just made small notes of throughout this time. It sounds so silly in a way, but it's made me be able to sympathize more with people who we're just so comfortable is what I'm trying to say.
That's
We're so
privilege.
comfortable in our preferences, in our everyday, just things that are so accessible to us that we don't even think twice about, like toilet paper, and I don't know, I think as a society, the things that we're experiencing in the middle of this pandemic and in the middle of quarantine, yeah, I think it will make us more sympathetic to third world countries and,
I
just
mean,
humans in general who
it
are
doesn't
in.
it doesn't even I'm sorry to cut you off, but it doesn't even need to extend to third world countries. Like
Mm-hmm.
we have so much, like literally downstairs. There's
No,
homeless
yeah,
Absolutely.
people
absolutely.
who
No, absolutely. But, it makes you think of humans, the human race and the suffering and the circumstances. And I don't know, it really puts things into perspective in a way.
absolutely.
And so here's how that's useful, right? Because that's a little bit of a waking up, right? That's where you can now be more
Right.
conscious.
Right,
You're more
exactly.
conscious, you're more aware, you might do things differently. You might care a little more. You might
Right.
attend to other people suffering a little more. When you see that people in Flint don't have clean water, you might take
Exactly.
5 more minutes to get involved in the campaign. So that's the benefit of waking up to what is really happening.
Yeah, and kind of just a silver lining, you know, of
Yeah,
all of this.
and or making use of it, because everything can be. We could be oblivious to it and not learn the lessons and not be awake and not pay attention, or we can use everything to kind of snap us out of our delusion and snap us out of
Right.
our collective, hypnosis of needs met, needs met, needs met, more,
Constantly.
more, more.
Right.
And to really
Yeah.
realize
Like how in a way how no, I don't want to say the word spoiled because it's like,
well, it's
almost in a
privilege.
way not our fault, right? But it's just
Yeah.
like, for once not getting something you even want, nonetheless need. Like we have everything we need. We
Yeah.
don't get something we want and we flip our shit. I don't get ketchup with my eggs and I'm like, meh. like,
I mean, people are literally like, when I say people, I mean a very select group of people are protesting staying home right now. And it's like I feel like that's the
it's a
epitome
whole
of
other conversation.
Mhm.
yeah, it is. But that's on privilege because it's like
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
all we're asking you to do is stay home and not get infected and not die, and yet
Hmm.
you're here rioting because you want to go back to work and make the millionaires and billionaires more rich, but like you said, that's
But
completely
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
I want to just say something about privilege, because a lot of people like skin crawls when you use the word privilege.
mhm.
Privilege is not saying that you didn't earn what you have. Privilege is just recognizing that you are taken care of in a way that others aren't. It's simply recognizing that having ketchup with your eggs is a very minor problem compared to having a roof over your head. And that's a privilege of your circumstances. You didn't really earn that. You happened to be born into a family that happened to be well enough that you could have ketchup with your eggs, and that had nothing to do with earning it. That had to do with that's
Right.
the way it is. So then you look
It's
at,
circumstantial.
and the outrage, Jess, that's sort of what I have felt too, is this privileged outrage, the outrage of privilege, right?
Mhm.
I still have my lungs, they're operating. No one in my family is on their deathbed. Therefore, I have the privilege to go out and complain that, again, people are suffering from financial, devastation, and it makes sense to knee jerk want to open up the government because I need to make money. But that goes so deep in the rabbit hole of how our culture is organized, how
Mhm.
capitalism works. I mean, the fact of the matter is, this economy is set up in a way that doesn't serve people. We're all chasing money. So we're all kind of rushing to get back and put our shackles on. It doesn't have to be that way.
Mhm.
Once, when it was an agricultural nation, there was barter. People had what they needed. It wasn't, everybody wasn't out for profit. It wasn't just about making more money and others kind of just slaving away. And that is a whole other conversation too. But we are privileged, and it wakes us up, and we can be responsible citizens with our knowledge. How do we go from like self-care to politics? I
I don't
don't
know, but
know.
this happens all the time. But
Yeah.
I would like to reel it back in,
Woo!
and just speak a little bit more on. I would like to just give our listeners like
Practical.
not even practical, just like what is in your. Jess likes to refer to it as a toolbox or a toolkit, which I also like to see as like kind of an image in my head. But yeah, I guess for those who are suffering from anxiety, what would be just your advice or your tips?
Well,
I know there's so many different like ways that can go, but
yeah, it depends on what works for you. I mean, there are some, I don't look at it as kind of, what were you saying, resisting anxiety? There was a term you used.
challenge, like how to
Challenging.
challenge
Yeah,
anxious thoughts.
that's one way you can do it, is to really try to get practical and real. It's like CBT, here's the thought, what's the truth? Here's the thought, what's the fact? Um, Another way is to just recognize that the anxious thoughts are anxious thoughts.
Right, and do that separation like we talked
That,
about
yeah,
earlier.
is the mindfulness grounding again, which I talked about earlier, really being present in the moment. In this moment, there's nothing's wrong. Really, in this
Yeah.
moment, I'm safe. In this moment, the
Right.
problem is we want to know that tomorrow I'll be safe too. That goes back to the Buddhist thing of fear of uncertainty. We're uncomfortable with uncertainty.
Mhm.
But if you're having a panic attack, and if you're having a panic attack, maybe you should be working with a therapist. But if you're in high anxiety, to breathe, because breathing literally calms your body down. So deep breaths are not just a nice idea; they're literally, biological relaxation, bringing oxygen into your body. Also gives your fight flight. You might know this, but we have like different brains in our brain, and our first is the fight flight that triggers first. It's literally the run from tigers. If we can manage to give ourselves a breath or two or three or 10, it gives our higher functioning brain, kind of like the downstairs and the upstairs brain, a chance to go online. And that's when we have more reasonable thoughts. We can see a bigger picture. We can calm ourselves down. So that's a cultivation. It's a cultivation of breath. Some people have other really practical skills like holding ice. It puts a sensation in the body. It takes you off of your mental processes. It interrupts the mental rumination. I'm also a big believer in read something else, go listen to music, create, do art, move the energy,
Mhm.
taking your mind. So more than resisting the thought, you kind of either have to replace it with another thought. You can't just make that thought go away. You can bounce it out with maybe a more helpful thought. So read something that calms you down, have a list of affirmations, listen to music, paint, do something to change your environment, inner and outer. So that's one way.
Okay, to reel us back in, ladies, love where this is going, but I do want to reel it back in. I do want to address that, a lot of people on top of feeling the feelings of anxiety, I think there's this feeling of not being okay or being sad, possibly even, slightly depressed or depressed. And mom, like you said, if you are feeling strong feelings and emotions with depression, definitely seek advice from a professional. And we want that for all of our listeners if you're struggling. But I would just like to say, it's okay to not be okay. I know on social media, we all just, we're not outwardly saying like, hey, today I woke up sad as fuck and hopeless and whatever. But I do feel like people are suffering in silence a little bit, especially, with the social isolation. And I don't know, I just want to validate some feelings and just if those who are struggling, how to cope. I know we talked about distancing yourself from the feelings, creating space from those feelings, but specifically maybe sadness or feelings of depression. Just want to touch on that a little
Mhm.
bit.
Yeah. So again, just to be clear, as a professional, clinical depression is very different from just circumstantial sadness, right? So a lot
Right.
of what's happening now is circumstantial sadness and depression,
Mhm.
unlike just bouts of depression, which can have an unknown source and last weeks, and that's definitely what somebody wants to get help with. In terms of sadness, I would say that it's human and normal to have sadness now. You kind of would be a psychopath if you didn't feel some sadness right now. Um, so, learning to sit with it, letting it kind of transform you and leaning into it. And when we say leaning into it, it's sort of allowing it, exploring it, you know, knowing what it feels like, what it tastes like, how does it, affect your day? What insights come from it? We run away from all of our colors. There's darkness and there's light, and there's cloudy days and there's sunny days. So to not be afraid of being sad
Mhm.
is a human emotion that makes us question sometimes. So again, putting aside like serious clinical depression, allowing ourselves to cry, allowing ourselves to be angry, to go lean into it. Like, what's beneath that anger? There's sadness. What's underneath that sadness? A feeling of helplessness, a feeling of being out of control, a feeling ultimately of fear. Those, being in touch with those emotions opens our heart to other people, because we
Mhm.
recognize, like, I'm human, I'm scared, you're scared, I know what that feels like. It really kind of creates a more wise and multidimensional experience, right? When we allow ourselves to know the experience in ourselves, we can connect with another person, which is ultimately what we all really, where we find our most reassurance, is knowing that, hey, we share this.
Right.
So
I I think I sent this to you, Liv, yesterday. It was a quote that I saw on some page on Instagram, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but I think it really speaks to feeling sadness and understanding that sadness is a necessary part of just growth and development and just life in general. And it was like you can only experience happiness and love to the degree in which you allow yourself to feel sadness and grief. You can't experience, the really high highs without understanding the really low lows.
What the lows feel like. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think it's just accepting, like you
yeah,
said, the human experience is not always joyful and happy, but those low times, they do make you appreciate the high times a lot more. Like I know, just thinking back on my own days, like it does. A rainy day, you know, makes a sunny day so much better. You
Mhm.
appreciate it so much more. And I was reading this blog and they said they were talking about social distancing and they said they don't want to call it social distancing. They want to call it physically distancing, but being socially intimate. And I think that's really important right now because we are losing those face to face interactions that we really prioritize our social intimacy with our friends and family and whoever else we can reach out to right now because I think, you know, speaking your feelings into existence and just talking to people is so helpful because you're not alone. And I think a lot of the feelings of sadness come from feeling like you're alone in that sadness. And now more than ever, we are all feeling the same things. So, you know, I think just reaching out to friends is really like underestimated and really helpful in a time like this.
And receiving each other's, not trying to talk, solutions always. One of the things, simplistic
Right.
solutions. Sometimes just holding others' sadness, holding your pain, reflecting it back. Yeah, I understand. It's hard today.
Not trying to give
Not
them
trying to
like
fix it.
advice.
A lot to think about in this episode, but I think that this conversation is really valuable to anyone that's, I mean, everyone, anyone and everyone, because we're all going
Yeah.
through this together. I don't think anyone is exempt from any of these feelings. And we're all in this together.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
everyone will experience it differently, to allow space for some people, handle things differently. Some want to watch the news, others don't, and should just respect each other's, process.
Yeah, and there's not a one size fits all. It's
Mhm.
about just looking within and knowing what works for you and what's best for you.
Mhm.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, well, thank you.
thanks
I think
for
this was a
being
great
here.
conversation. I know you want to read a poem,
Sure,
so we
that's
can
beautiful.
we okay, good. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. I think it was something that's necessary right now. I know I'm seeing a lot on social media about mental health, and I do think in the last week or two it has really come to surface
Mhm.
that this is not only a physical issue globally, but this is very much a mental issue becoming, especially with the quarantining and this isolation. So I hope this was helpful for anyone struggling right now. We are always thinking about you guys and how we can provide the most value for you. And, you're human. Don't beat yourself up. We're reminding ourselves to do the same.
Yeah, every
Yeah,
day.
and just one other note, many states are also putting in, like, free resources for mental health counseling. I know New York
Sure.
City has, phone numbers people can call, so, definitely, if you wanna do links later or whatever, I can provide some of that.
Great.
And as I
Yeah.
said, a lot of therapists are doing reduced fees. A lot of therapists are now doing online work, so if someone feels like they wanna talk to someone, definitely reach out.
Sure. And what is
Definitely.
your social media? Where can people find you if they want to hear
Yeah.
more?
Um, beaconhealingarts.org.
And that's
Beacon.
Beacon, Beacon,
Right, like a
like bacon
beacon,
with an E.
I was
like
literally going to
like
say that.
you guys, more like beacon, like a lighthouse in the dark
Bacon.
to bring you home, more like that. But bacon's good too.
Bacon's great.
It
Whatever
could be
works.
really comforting.
Um, and last but not least, we'd love to dive into our deep
Deep
dive.
dive.
So this
Just
is a set of three
uh,
questions that we ask every guest.
Okay,
Um, Very excited to hear your answers.
I can't
So our
wait.
first question is, what is your why? I feel like I don't have to explain this.
What is my why? Well, my personal why is to see truth, to know what the truth of my incarnation is. That's my
Mhm.
personal why. The way that's manifesting for me in the world is to be of service to others. Um, I have a quote tattooed on my arm.
wait, because the second question is what is your favorite quote and what does it mean to you?
Roll it all up. The escape from all false ties, courage to be what we are, and love of what is simple and beautiful. Goes on to say, independence and cheerful relations. These are the essentials. these and the wish to serve, to add somewhat to the well-being of men. Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Love
Okay.
it.
Love
Yeah.
that.
And then, Liv, did you want to ask the last question?
Sure. So the third question is, what do you think separates successful people from those who give up, fail, or never get started on their dreams?
Yeah, my definition of success is different, maybe.
Sure.
So looking in, know thyself, taking the time to ask the questions of what brings meaning to your life.
Mm-hmm. What lights your fire?
Yeah, your why.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing your why, I guess, is the difference between success and never getting there. Probably being a slave to outside ideas of success would make someone, in my frame of success, not reach their goal.
Love
Heard.
that.
Is that
Heard
Heard
that.
that. Love
okay?
that.
You wanted to read a little poem to
I
wrap this
want to
up?
read a little poem by Rumi, one of the great mystics of all time. It's called The Guest House. And I think it summarizes what we talked about today. Ready?
Ready.
Okay. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond.
I love that.
Very nice, Mama.
Love you guys. I hope this
All
was
right.
useful. It was my
Yes.
pleasure. I hope you found it useful. I hope your listeners find it useful. I love you guys. And yeah, just keep sending light and love. Help us out in the darkness.
Yes, for sure. We hope you guys love this episode. Please post it on your stories. If you enjoyed, send it to a friend or a family member who you know could benefit from hearing this conversation right now. Yeah, and just we're all in this together. Let's just keep, shining light and taking it one day at a time.
Hell yeah, brother.
Peace
Hell
out.
yeah, brothers.
All
Have a
right.
great
Bye,
week,
guys.
guys.
We love
Bye.
you.
Love